Hey, race fans, Hall of Famer Darrell Waltrip here. You know, it's time to drop the green flag on another edition of Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic. So, hey, pull those belts tight one more time. Here's my buddy Hermie Sadler and Senator Bill Stanley. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's see what they have to say, boys and girls.
I'm Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm turning right. Nope. Yep. No. Wait. Let me try that again. I'm Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm leaning right.
That's kind of a high-pitched voice. Somebody got a hold of you there, Senator?
It's our new sponsor. Must have changed my voice. We'll talk about that later.
And I'm former NASCAR driver and Fox Sports analyst Hermie Sadler. And I think after that, I'm turning left, but I'm not sure.
You sound like you have a little more baritone to your voice.
I don't know if I should be, instead of turning left, turning around and going back and picking you up, or what happened?
I don't know. Maybe I'm regressing. You know, you always want to get younger as you get older. Maybe I'm going back through puberty, and I'll have my high voice that I had when I was 7. Hermie, how you doing, bud?
I'll let you and Chad have that show on your own later.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Discuss that.
Yeah, the curious case of Senator Bill Stanley. So how you doing, Herm?
I'm doing great. How are you? I'm doing great. We been down at the Outer Banks for a couple of days for the 4th of July, and very rare and awesome time to get our whole family together. And we were here for dinner last night, July 4th, and my mom and dad both told us, you know, I guess I hadn't learned to appreciate that as much as I should, and I'm sure as I will as I get older. But my mom and dad both said before we gave the blessing that how blessed they felt they were to have all of their kids and grandkids and things under one roof, you know, for a dinner and a couple of days at the beach. So it's been awesome. We're very blessed in that way. My dad is getting around a little bit, enough to make a ride down here to the beach and be with us. So it's been a great couple of days, and I hope yours has been as well.
Yeah, no, and you make a good point. It was a very nice and quiet 4th of July weekend. After we came back from Caraway, we just basically, we got a mountain place, and we've got, of course, the house. And a lot of times, because I'm gone in the General Assembly for 2 months out of the year, I'm working my butt off trying to make up for lost time here at the law firm. And instead, it doesn't give a lot of vacation time for me. And a lot of times my family will go on vacation, and I'll have to stay here and work like they did when they went to Dollywood. But this July 4th weekend, we were able to just be together. And I'm always reminded of my father, who died a month, you've heard that before from me, a month after I graduated from college, who shaped my life. Both my mom and dad did in ways that I'm forever grateful, as I know you are with yours. But he said to me, when he was sick, he gave me a lot of advice. And one of those things was, don't be too busy making a living that you forget to make a life. And I think, what I've been seeing a lot with myself is that I'm constantly moving on stuff where, we do the race team, we do this podcast, I do the politics, I do the law practice. The law practice takes up a lot of time. Politics takes up a lot of time. Usually on the July 4th weekend, I'm out at parades or going to events, car shows, the things, shaking hands. And this year, I just said I'm going to stay home because, my son's birthday, we're taping on Tuesday, July 5th. My son Chandler turns the big 11 today. So happy birthday, Chandler. You wanted me to say that on the podcast.
Happy birthday, Chandler. Yeah,
but he and I spent the whole weekend together. We played Xbox. We played PS4. We raced. He continuously beat me and put me into the fence in our racing games. And then he and I decided he really wanted to go to GameStop. So we went to GameStop and found some racing games and asked the big guy there if they had any PS5s, and he said, no, they won't have them, until September, October. And Chandler turns to me and goes, Dad, remember that place where you bought the bed? And we bought a bed for our master bedroom. And I said, yeah. They said, they had a PS5, and that was Schul's. We went to Schul's, got to Schul's. There's a PS5 sitting on the Schul's shelf. And I'm like, of course, now you got to buy it. But then they give you the Schul's price, which was pretty big. And as we were paying for it, this guy comes running in and says, oh, there's the PS5, because it was on the desk. I called ahead, from Rocky Mount, because Rocky Mount Schul's didn't have it. They're like, we're sorry, we sold it. And this guy was so disappointed. And Chandler's looking over there like, is he going to grab that box and run out the door? And now if he had offered me like $2,500 for it, I probably would have coughed it up and explained it to the boy later, maybe given him some of that money. But so we played games. We got in the pool, the above-ground pool at the Redneck Aquatic Center. Did some yard work, housework. I cleaned the whole house for my wife so she wouldn't have to. And we took care of our new addition, the cat, which we'll talk about. But we had a really good weekend. It was relaxing, and it's nice to be back. But I think I know now what it means to make a life. And I think I've missed a lot of those opportunities. And to turn around and your son turns 11, and you wonder where all the time went. You want to make sure that the next 11 years you're there for every moment. So that was my weekend. Had a great time. Cooked out, ate a lot, just like you. I saw on Facebook, you had a picture of about a stack of pizzas and 3 or 4 boxes
donuts.
of Duck Donuts, and it says,
No, they were
why
all
can't I lose
donuts.
any weight? Oh, they were all donuts?
They were all donuts.
There's my high voice
Thanks
again.
to Elliot Sadler. That's a morning ritual when we're at the
Holy
beach.
cow.
You get about 12 boxes of Duck Donuts every morning. But let me scoot back 1 second. Make sure your wife continues to work hard and bring in that dough, because as we've talked about before, I'll go back through it again if you want me to. I work hard
No.
to get her on as the Turning Left sponsor on the podcast, and we need her to generate revenue to pay that note.
Well, I'll tell her that. She got a big kick out of your build-up, your lead-up, and then your delivery of the new sponsorship for your Turning Left moment, and it was quite funny, and she sends her regards to you as well. And I thought it was hilarious. I listened to the last episode. I was laughing the whole time. I thought it was a great episode. We're not having today. You're at the beach. I'm at the mothership, the Stanley Law Group mothership here in beautiful Smith Mountain Lake, Virginia. So we're recording remotely, and because of, I guess, the equipment that we bought from Eastern Europe, we can't fit Shep on here and our guest today. So we're Shep-less. I wouldn't call it Shep-free, but we're Shep-less. And he's also texting. I think he's a little butthurt about not being included in today's show. What did he write there, Brad? He wrote something like, hold on here. He said, I've been fired. Chad says, can't get the audio to work.
Not fired, just put on the bench for one day.
So Brad writes to him, can't get out audio to work for 4 people, so we can't have you on this week. They want you next week if you're available. I've been fired. Brad sends back, because, we get sensitive around here. You've not been fired. Oh, this is my quote. Quote, you've not been fired. Don't get sensitive on us. Bill. And he said, I was good while it lasted. Man, a lot of sensitive people around here. I mean, geez. Luckily I'm the tough guy.
He wants to be a politician. He wants to be a politician like you. And so he sees you get a little sideways once in a while when things don't go exactly right. So he's following
I am
your
not
footsteps.
sensitive. Why do you keep saying I'm sensitive? That really kind of pisses me off. I'm a little upset about that. God, picking on me. Well, we miss you, Shep, and
Exhibit A. Exhibit A.
we miss you, Shep, and we'll have you next time. But we have a great guest today. He's coming up in the next hour. One of the finest congressmen that we have in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Served in the Virginia House of Delegates. Was the majority leader for 10 years. Was a wonderful leader there at the state level. 11 years ago, I guess it was, because it was the same time that I ran. He ran for Congress against a sitting state congressman, been there for 20-some-odd years, beat him. And that was the same year that Robert Hurt won, then I ran in the special election. Greg Habib ran to replace him in the House of Delegates. Wonderful guy. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court rulings, what Congress is like, what it's like to be in Congress, and how do we correct, or what his thoughts are on correcting the current situation that we seem to find ourselves in here in the United States. Our guest, Congressman Morgan Griffith. Morgan's a great guy. Morgan's wife used to be my law partner before she went on the bench. She's now a judge, and I always said that she became a judge for the simple reason that way she wouldn't have to be my law partner anymore. And no, how are you doing?
There's Naomi's first appearance ever.
Hello,
on the podcast.
Naomi.
It's been a long time.
I know. Let's have you again.
How are
Doing
y'all
great.
doing?
How are you doing? Taking a break from softball?
do not have a private studio here. I'm using the common area here at the house.
This is going to be interesting.
We might have multiple guests.
This is going to be interesting. Well, as they come in, just get them a headset and let them talk, and let's see how this goes. We're just going to wing this. So you were down at the beach with all of your family. You're saying Elliot, your sister, you,
Missy. Yep. All the kids, grandkids.
That's
everybody.
fantastic.
Yep, been great.
That's really fantastic. And you don't look that tan.
Angie, would you like to make an appearance? A light appearance? Just come show your face. This is not going to be on YouTube.
Hello.
What's
How you
up?
doing, Angie? Good to see you. No, that's Hermie's wife.
Not quite as talkative as Naomi.
No,
Yeah.
and she's very excited about one of our new sponsors.
But these are their first appearances on the podcast.
And for Angie, not going to be your last, because we're planning a podcast where we sit down with the women of the Leaning Right, Turning Left podcast. That's going to be an exciting show that will either be one of our most popular or never heard from ever again, depending on how it goes. But that's one for the future books that we've been doing. We also today included Hermie in a production meeting. Did we not, Brad? We did. Brad shaking his head right. Yes. So congratulations. See, we invited
it
you.
will not be nearly as effective since I'm supposed to somewhat know what is coming. It will not help. Rest assured.
That's why we usually try to keep you out of there, because then there's some good surprises. But we've got some surprises for you, and it wouldn't be a Leaning Right, Turning Left podcast without that. So,
well, let's get to the leaning right. Let's go.
All right. So, enough with the chit chat. I hadn't spoken to you on the phone in a long time, so I was kind of catching up with you here.
Were you kind of worried about
I
me?
was, because it was.
Were you watching my social media to see what was coming?
I was. It was more than 3 days. I got up every morning, made sure nothing was wrong. You didn't show up on the morning jam. At Maverick 102.3.
I decided to keep heartburn to a minimum on this July 4th holiday.
Well, when you don't show up on the Maverick, then I get a little concerned, and then
I'll be back in the morning. I'm going back tomorrow
great,
morning.
because it's great when you're on it. Everybody listen to 102.3 The Maverick talk show. It's a wonderful talk show, and especially on Wednesdays when Hermie shows up, he stirs everything up. So, all right, today, this morning's Leaning Right moment is brought to you once again by Charlie's Waterfront Cafe. Charlie's Waterfront Cafe in downtown beautiful Farmville, Virginia, overlooking the Appomattox River. Great food, great fun, great drink, great atmosphere. You can eat outside on the deck, inside, or even go down to the tasting cellar and get yourself a nice fine Virginia wine, and they have a great menu there as well. So for my friend Tommy Graziano, the longest sponsorship we've had next to Pace-O-Matic, we thank you for the Leaning Right movement. I got a couple things here, Herm, that's really, we talk about politics, but I'm going to talk to you about politics, because the things were happening like on July 2nd, and I even sent you this article.
And just let me say before you start these questions, I do not like politics.
Why is that?
Did you hear that?
Yes. Why is that?
If I were to ever run for political office, my campaign slogan would be, I hate politics. Think I could win with that?
Actually, probably so. I think so. I think, the way the world's going right now, I don't think politics is high on anybody's mind. If you look at the... And the reason I say that is people are putting politics ahead, in some cases, ahead of the real needs of people. And it's frustrating. I mean, as just a citizen and trying to run businesses and raise families and all that, it's just really frustrating. I'm not saying you particularly, Senator. I'm saying the political game as a whole. No, and I don't blame you. I mean, the climate right now is not good. And if you look at the polls, 70 some odd percent of Americans were polled during the July 4th holiday and believe that the country's going in a wrong direction, that they're not proud of their country right now. A lot of them are not proud because of the things that our current government is doing. Some of those people are not proud because of some of the Supreme Court rulings we saw on July 4th, stars from Hollywood, which really just makes me roll my eyes, denigrating the United States on the day which we celebrate liberty and freedom. At the same time, they collect those huge checks and are influencers and have people follow them. Because they have those liberties and freedoms, they nevertheless decide if they don't agree on one issue or one ruling by the Supreme Court, that's it. America sucks. It doesn't help us all come together. It kind of drives us more apart. So that that point you just made, Hermie, I think is exactly right. And what we had again this weekend on July 2nd was our president, Joe Biden. He was watching, of course, his favorite MSNBC, and NBC News reported that gas stations in the United States make 15 cents a gallon on average, according to the National Association of Convenience Stores. So then Biden fires out a tweet, which I found alarming. And this kind of indicates where we are right now. From Biden, he said, quote, "My message to the companies running gas stations," or should I do it in my old voice? Old person voice? All right, I'm going to do it in my Joe Biden old person voice. Let me start this again. Joe Biden put this following tweet out. "My message to the companies running gas stations and setting prices at the pump is simple. This is a time of war and global peril. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you're paying for the product, and do it now. And get off my lawn." That Joe Biden impression was brought to you by a couple cigarettes. So Joe Biden sends out this tweet. We have finally determined it's not Ukraine war's fault. It's not Putin's fault. Guess whose fault it is? For the high price of gas. Who dares to make 15 cents a gallon for buying, transporting, storing, and selling? It's Hermie Sadler. Hermie Sadler, Sadler truck stops, slip-in food marts, and all other convenience store owners that dare to sell that petrol and make a 15 cent per gallon profit. That's your fault for these high gas prices. And so, Hermie, are you going to listen to your president and bring down the price of gas that you're paying for the product and do it now?
What a joke. That's one thing that's really frustrating about this administration is they always deflect. They deflect blame and they deflect people from the real issues of what's going on. And I actually responded to someone had, and I forgot who, someone had replied to President Biden's tweet about that. And then I replied to that and brought up the fact that, hey, the president's basically come out and saying, if you own a convenience store or a truck stop, lower the price of your gas now because we're in a wartime, do it now. And I brought up the fact that what are we supposed to do as business owners about the fact that our payroll, because of the lack of people in the workforce due to failed policies of this administration, what do we do about our payroll being up 15, 20%? What do we do about the cost of our goods being up 15, 20%? What do we have to do about our insurance going up, our electric bill going up? All these costs are going up in a manner that we can't keep up with it. So what is the president going to tweet about that? How do we cover our costs? How do we pay our people? How do we invest? How do we build our infrastructure around our businesses? How do we maintain our businesses? All these things. But give you a little bit of something that you can share back with the president. I know you talk to Mr. Biden daily, Senator. You take an average, let's just take an average, not a huge location, but an average convenience store that you would have, say us in Emporia, or you up around Smith Mountain Lake area, average rural area convenience store, okay? Forget the store itself, forget the inside, forget the fountain drinks, forget the snacks, forget the kitchen, forget all that. The average cost of just the petroleum equipment, just the equipment, the tanks, the pumps, the canopy, the inside equipment to help people sell and collect money for gas, take credit cards, those kind of things. The average cost of that equipment alone, again, not including anything else, is roughly $800,000. Okay? So if you buy something that you pay $800,000 for, your payment is, just figure a normal, 5, 6, 7% interest rate. Y'all can figure that. It's going to be $7,000, $8,000 a month. Is that fair? I mean,
yeah. Interest. Just
Close?
interest.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, okay. So he's accurate in saying, or whoever you quoted in that article, we average about 15 cents a gallon, which, by the way, just so people know, when gas prices are really, really high, margins for convenience store operators and truck stops are much lower than they are when gas prices are way lower, because the market is climbing, and not everybody within a market climbs at the same rate as the market does. So to be competitive, we have to be competitive with other stations in the market. So if a price goes up, if gas goes up 10 cents in one day, we can't go up 10 cents in one day. We have to go up if the guy across the street does. And that's something that we can't control. Everybody has their own right to do those things. But by and large, we make much less margin when gas prices are really high. But let's use this 15 cents a gallon number, which is an accurate number. And if we do an average station that pumps in a rural area 1,500 gallons a day at 15 cents a gallon, that's $225 a day profit on gas. You do that for a month, 30 days, that's $6,750 profit. That's not even enough to pay the bank note on the petroleum equipment that you've got in the ground at your facility. So I suggest the president, before he starts making comments about things that, and look, not just the president and not just on the issue of gas prices. One of the big things, as you well know, we've got this lawsuit going on against the Commonwealth of Virginia as it relates to skill games. Here's another perfect example of why these games and the revenue from these games is so critical right now for these people across the Commonwealth of Virginia. Is because we cannot control, as a convenience store operator, we cannot control what we charge for a price of gas. We have to charge the same thing the people across the street are charging, or other people in the market are charging. It doesn't matter if I sell more gas and I get a tractor trailer load of fuel every 3 or 4 days and I'm paying a higher price. The guy across the street may not pump as much gas. He may not have bought a truckload of gas in 3 weeks. He may have bought it at a much lower price. So, but I can't figure, I have to do what the market does. And so it's just really tone deaf for the President of the United States, given the information that he's got, just come at people like us and say, lower your price now. We're in a wartime. You're hurting people. Do it now. When, as the business owner, we've got all the investment. We've got the people. We've got the infrastructure. And I made this comment to you about our lawsuit. In October of 2020, I signed a 20-year note at the bank to buy a truck stop in Suffolk, Virginia. My payment monthly is about $48,000. And when we're looking at how we're going to make this revenue up, you look at everything: gas sales, fuel sales, grocery sales, chips, drinks, whatever the case may be, and the little bit of revenue we get off skill games at that location. Well, then the government comes in and says, we're banning these games statewide, Mr. Sadler. That's like changing the rules at halftime of a football game. I've already signed my life away on a banknote on the dotted line to buy this business and this company, and the government's coming in and saying, you no longer have this source of revenue. And so this is just a perfect example of what frustrates me about people in Richmond that are legislators and supposed to be creating policy and dealing with government, putting undue burden and restriction on small businesses, and then on top of that, putting blame on the small businesses. When, if anybody knew any better, if he knew any better, if he understood what it costs to purchase, operate, and maintain petroleum equipment, to sell gas, to make only 15 cents a gallon, if he knew how dumb that sounded before he said it, maybe he wouldn't have said it. So, and not only that, we don't have a choice. We have to pay our payroll, based on what the market is. We pay prices for potato chips and snacks and candy bars based on what our wholesalers tell us we have to pay. We have no control over any of that. And yet he thinks we're just, crushing people. And most people, I can't speak for all, but most people like us, we're just trying to survive. And these costs are going up daily. And they're asking us to cut back. And why is he asking us to cut back, Senator? He's asking us to cut back because his failed policy and agenda, even before he got elected, while he was campaigning, he said he was going to phase out fossil fuel. Do you remember him saying that? Okay.
He keeps saying that. I mean, he's doubled down on that because.
So that's what he keeps saying. The problem is there was never, is not now, and will not be in the foreseeable future, a comprehensive plan to get from point A all the way to point B. So instead of him saying at some point, you know what, I may have miscalculated, I may have made a mistake, we need to go back and revisit how we get from point A to point B, he's too proud to say that. He's too proud to say maybe we miscalculated, we made a mistake, we need a course correction. And in the meantime, a lot of people are getting crushed.
And there's a lot of response here, and it falls right in line with what you're saying. Senator Ted Cruz tweeted back, "My message to the guy running your teleprompter, Mr. President, is it's your fault. Reverse the dozens of executive orders, regulations, and agency actions targeting American energy and gas prices will fall fast." I think he makes a good point there, Hermie. I think, they put a stranglehold on the oil industry, the fossil fuel industry, to the point where they've canceled leases. They've not allowed full production. They're hurting our refineries that turn the crude oil into gas. And at the same time, his answer to the problem is, I'm going to go to those Middle East countries and I'm going to tell them to ramp up production. These Middle East countries that hate us, oil energy independence gives us the freedom from those parts of the world that hate us and try to do us in, but yet we're dependent on. His answer is to go there. And he's so, like you said, tone deaf. He has to have the French president come up to him, Macron, and say, Biden, sorry, they're at max production already. There's no way that the oil-producing nations in the Middle East can ramp up production. That just demonstrates not only that he's really half-assing it and his heart's not in it to help us, but quite frankly, I think it demonstrates a complete lack of knowledge of the world, of inflation, of economic principles. And even Jeff Bezos, CEO, founder of Amazon, tweeted in response to this Biden tweet, which we've just read to you, "Ouch, inflation is far too important a problem for the White House to keep making statements like this. It's either straight ahead misdirection or a deep misunderstanding of basic market dynamics." That from one of the top tier business people in the world, probably a Democrat. And his response to our president says, you're either doing this on purpose, misdirecting, or you have a basic lack of understanding of market dynamics. I mean, what do you think, Herm?
He's basically, I mean, as a convenience store operator, shouldn't we be entitled to make a little bit of a profit? I mean, 15 cents a gallon. You said it. That was a quote. The information you had. So he's basically saying, people are struggling, sell your gas for free. Give it away. So if convenience stores and truck stops go under or go out of business and shut down, who does that help? I mean, that's just more people out of business, more jobs lost. Then where are people going to get the goods and services they need? But just the whole thing is just unbelievable.
We'll take it a couple steps further.
And
just take it, you've got, obviously their idea is to shut down fossil fuels, petroleum, gas-powered engines, but yet their alternative is, you see it from a Democrat congresswoman, buy a Tesla. Well, you know how expensive Teslas are? I can't afford a Tesla. Can you afford a Tesla? Well, maybe you can. I cannot. No. But then it goes even further, Hermie. So I was looking in the newspaper, and Biden says this stupid crap about gas station owners, convenience store owners, to bring down the price you're charging. Do it now. But guess who was very much in favor of what he said? Chinese state media. Chinese state media, communist China, who is one of the biggest users of fossil fuels, polluters in the world, stated the following, quote, "Now U.S. President finally realized that capitalism is all about exploitation. He didn't believe us before." What do you think of that, man? I mean, the Chinese love what he's doing. They love what he's saying. What does that tell you about who we have leading the free world?
Well, the fact of the matter is, it's not really him that's making those decisions or really taking that liberal of a stance. He doesn't know any better, unfortunately. But he's the CEO of the United States of America. And as a CEO of companies, in the real world, which is not where he's living, in the real world, is if you make bad decisions or create bad policy or get the company going on the wrong track, you either have to course correct or you get fired. And unfortunately, he's not willing or has not been willing up to this point to even acknowledge how bad things are. They get on TV and talk about, I was watching something the other day, he said, the economy is very strong. I'm like, where? What are you talking about? I mean, it's just not reality. For him to, and that's one thing I said, I hate politics. It's so frustrating. Is he, along with people in his corner, they always blame somebody else. It's my fault. It's your fault, Bill. It's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. It's everybody's fault but the people that are in charge of making those decisions. And I'll say it again. They had an agenda. They have an agenda they're trying to get to. Problem is they have never had a comprehensive plan to get us from where we are to where we want to go, or where they want us to go. And they've had no remorse whatsoever for the hundreds of thousands of people and businesses that have been lost and just killed in this transition. People are going out of business every single day. The middle to lower income people that the Democrats always say they're going to take care of are getting crushed worse than anybody else during this time. And they get on TV and talk about how wonderful everything is. And I just don't know how long citizens of this country are going to continue to let this happen, because it's a runaway train going the wrong way.
And now you got China, our enemy, the one that wants to do us in, brought us the China virus, the Wuhan coronavirus, saying, see, U.S. president has finally realized that capitalism is all about exploitation. Capitalism solves these problems. It's socialism that creates these problems. It's government controls that create these problems. And even not just Jeff Bezos was out there in the Twitterverse universe saying what you've been saying, Hermie. We've had Speaker of the Texas House, Dade Phelan, said the president is doubling down on his request for gas stations to take one for the team. A complete lack of understanding of how this industry, or any industry for that matter, operates. Margins are pennies per gallon. A 40-plus year inflation crisis, and this is his solution? I mean, a writer for the Washington Post, Helene Olin, says, I'm sorry, but this is just sad. Mike Senovich, a political commentator, there's no margin in gasoline. They make their money on sodas and junk food. This is franchise 101 level knowledge, which the leader of the free world is lacking. But then, you thought, okay, maybe he's just old. Maybe he's a little, senile there. I don't know why that knee-jerk reaction tweet occurred. But then I was watching the news, and on CNN, because I go over to the Communist News Network every now and then just to check, and I see this interview with the National Economic Council director Brian Dees. Brian Dees nuts, and he says what exactly they're trying to do, and so I rewound that my DirecTV. And I recorded that, and we've got that right now. This is what the director of the National Economic Council said, Brian Dees nuts, with regard to what Joe Biden said about the high price of gas. You've got the reporter interviewing him, asking him a question about these high prices for gas, and this is what he said in response. Brad,
They say that this could be a a war measured in years, and I think everybody understands why this is happening, but is it sustainable? What do you say to those families who say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. This is just not sustainable.
Well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
What? I said, what?
The liberal law of order.
Liberal world order. I mean, you got to be kidding me. But see, they're so brazen at this point in time. They used to just hide it behind the curtain. Now they don't even hide by the curtain. You know, they hid behind the curtain what they were teaching our kids in schools and CRT. And then we saw from the pandemic that curtain was ripped back. And then they're like, what are you talking about? No, nothing happened. We didn't do this. And yes, they are. And then they double down. Well, we should, because now what you're doing is not teaching about racism in school, which is absolute bunk. And now you have Brian D's Nuts, National Economic Council Director, saying that, hey, what Biden said about you, Hermie, convenience store owner, truck stop owner, is exactly a perfect articulation of how we're going to, in the new liberal world order, get rid of you and small business and subject everybody to our liberal world order. What in the hell?
Yeah, it's a all-out assault on capitalism. It's an all-out assault on families, small businesses, the people. You know, as I said, they came out, Biden did, before he got elected and said, I'm going to phase out fossil fuel. Then he tries to come back and ask people in the fossil fuel industry to, hey, invest millions of dollars to get your facilities back operating to help me out to get through this little crisis until I'm ready to kick you to the curb again. I mean, he's just so out of touch. And it's just unbelievable to, you know, at some point you have to, if you can't say it, you have to at least think it. You know, we have made a terrible miscalculation or terrible decision to take this country down this path. And then they want to come to people like us, the small business owner, and say, you know, you need to cut your profit. You need to make nothing. You need to, I'm not even sure what he's really saying. I mean, we are the distributor of these products to consumers, and we have no control over stuff that costs. We have to pay what people say it costs us when we go pay for it, you know. And not only that, when I send a 8,500 gallon rig to buy a tanker load of gas, they debit my account when I drive off the property. You know, it takes days, weeks, months to turn that money back in, you know. So you're talking about cash flow, and, you know, it's 2 years ago, a tanker load of gas was $25,000. Now it's $44,000. You know, I mean, that money comes out of people's businesses. It's just, and I've told you this, and I hate to keep bringing everything back to the skill game lawsuit and the benefit that it's had. Give a damn what anybody in Richmond thinks about our lawsuit and what the casinos think. They can be mad all they want to, but this revenue that we've had coming in because of our lawsuit has just been critical to keeping these businesses alive and afloat. And it's just, you know, I say this to you many times on this podcast, and even many more times than that, just in private conversation. Our lawmakers in Richmond and our lawmakers in Washington, D.C. have a real lack of understanding at how some of their policies affect normal, everyday working people. So, you know, I hope people are getting tired of it.
Well, you know, what is liberal world order? And that they have to stand firm for the future of the liberal world order. I mean,
I don't know.
If I, a Republican, or any Republican would have come onto the scene and said, we must preserve the conservative world order, they would be calling me a quack, a crackpot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how about just freedom and liberty? Let's just start there, and free enterprise and the capitalistic system that we have going on. Let's talk about that. That should be neither liberal nor conservative, because it's a human issue. Those rights granted to us by our Creator and are codified in the Declaration of Independence or in our Constitution were granted by God, not by government. And here is government saying, here's the liberal world order. Well, what is that liberal world order? That you can't have an opinion that differs from the government or from liberals? And if you are, then you are not entitled to free speech protections under the Constitution? Does that mean that everybody has to drive a Tesla, pay higher fuel costs, pay higher electric costs, which hurt the poor? Does that mean that the government hands you your future, tells you what your future is, rather than giving you the opportunity and creating the opportunity for you to go out and be whoever you want to be? Is that the liberal world order we're talking about? Because I don't see in any agenda that they have that they're protecting the Second Amendment, really working to break the cycle of poverty, to get people out of poverty, and helping small businesses, and ultimately protecting freedom and liberty and people's rights granted under free will, also given to us by our Creator, to be who they want to be, to say what they want to say. You either conform or you're out. That's the liberal world order to me.
Yeah, they're not interested at all in the free market system. They're not interested at all in capitalism. They want everybody to be dependent on them. They want everybody to have to depend on them to get by. They want everybody to be equal in that way. So I guess some people are okay with that.
Yeah.
But
look, if
some
you took
people
a poll,
like me and you.
Yeah, if you took a poll in the United States and said, hey, in order to preserve the liberal world order, are you willing to pay higher gas prices and put small businesses like Hermie out of business? What do you think? You'd have 8% that say yes.
But
They're so brazen and yet so stupid, and they are willing to harm us all to get what those small elites in the liberal world order want, which is domination over thought, domination over life, domination and elimination of freedom and liberty.
I hope this little discussion has given people a little bit more information to chew on about why you and I filed this lawsuit and relates to skill games. Yeah. It really has nothing to do with games. It has to do with the government saying, you can't have this, you need to have this. And I'll say it again. I know you can't call names, but I can. At one of these committee hearings, several months ago, there was a discussion about these skill games. Senator Janet Howell said, these businesses, we're going to get rid of these games because we don't like them, and the casinos don't want them in these convenience stores. And these convenience stores need to, quote unquote, find other ways to make money. So they kicked us to the curb, left us for dead on the side of the road, and we're supposed to fend for ourselves. Okay? Now they're coming back to us on the federal level and saying, hey, convenience store owner, lower the price of your gas because people need help. So you can't have it both ways. And they, as I said, they are so out of touch with reality, so out of touch with what it takes to actually run and operate a business and pay people, be responsible for people. And a lot of people are getting hurt. Yeah. And it is really scary. It's
bullshit.
It is really scary.
It's BS. Sorry I use that language, but it is, and I'm tired of it. This transformation has occurred in a little over a year and a half. And there's no point in which Biden could just say, hey, for the time being, let's drill some more. Let's bring down price of crude. Let's do some domestic production. No. Hey, yeah, I know this huge inflation from my bad policies is causing a lot of hurt, especially in our small communities, especially in our rural and urban areas where people are living at or below the poverty level. Oh, no, we'll just give you more government subsidies to satisfy you and to keep you from being independent and a free thinker. We want you dependent on the government. I mean, I just don't know, and we're going to ask our guest who's coming up in the next hour, how the hell do we get out of this? But it's important to get out of it. And so, and you brought up skill games, and it just, as we finish up the leaning right moment, I just wanted to say, I've gotten some questions, some phone calls, and for a lot of our listeners are convenience store owners or relatives of convenience store owners that have the legitimate skill games in their stores right now. July 1st, the budget went into effect, the 2-year budget. You've got that squirrely language we talked about before about appropriate rewards and counters on the internal clocks and all that stuff. We've looked at the order. We're telling all of our convenience store owners, restaurant, bars, truck stops that have the licensed skill games that were licensed through the ABC, some 10,000 games, you can run those games. Do not turn them off. Nothing has changed. Nothing in that budget amendment changed anything about our lawsuit, and it certainly didn't weaken our injunction. Those games remain on. I've written, Hermie asked me for a legal opinion. I'm going to share it with him, but I'm going to share it with all the convenience store owners of why that doesn't apply. Our injunction's still in full force and effect, and we're going to go on to victory in November to get these games legitimized and left on. So I just wanted to say that as well, Hermie. I don't know if you have a comment about that.
Yeah, this is I tell my family, there's been an ongoing conversation about me maybe running for office and whether or not to do it and the political climate and this and that and the other. And all these things going on, it's just a perfect example of the people that are in charge right now. If you let them, they'll take everything you got and give it to somebody else. And you either got a choice. You can stand up and fight, or you can sit there and take it. And that's exactly what they'll do if you let them. And it can change things, and things can be gone quick, and you can blink an eye. And because I've experienced enough in my 3 years of trying to do things the right way and get things done, get questions answered by my elected officials. And they turned their back on me, and they turned their back on small businesses. And now the same thing is going on at the federal level. And I'm hoping in Virginia we saw a changing of the tide with the election of Governor Youngkin and Winsome Sears and Jason Miyares. And I hope they appreciate and understand the tide that turned and people went to vote for them, or a lot of people, all these small business owners and operators that need to be thought about more when we're talking about policy and government and things of that nature. But now we got elections coming up again, Bill. I know you're in politics and things, but we got November coming up, November 22, and we got November 23 coming up, some other big elections. And some of these people, I live in Emporia, Greensville, and we have not seen our elected senator of our district in Emporia, Greensville that I can remember. But you know what? Election time is getting ready to come. You're going to start seeing these people, these Democrats going to different areas of these districts and things, and they're going to say, oh, don't you worry about a thing. Even though you hadn't seen me since the last election, I promise I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to give you this and I'm going to give you that. Just get all your people to go vote for me. And then they win again, and they fall for the bait, and you don't see them again for another 4 years. And how long are they going to let this cycle go on? It's really scary.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a new wind blowing, and I think you're going to see it in the midterm elections, but I think you're also going to see it in Virginia. We seen the abortion ruling comes down. Who gets violent, who starts breaking things, who are threatening to assassinate our Supreme Court justices? Ooh, the liberals, the Democrats. 50-50, that issue is split in the United States. Nobody sits there and thinks about, there's going to be some conservative radicals that are going to, bust something up or create some violence. But yet at the same time, January 6th is so important to us that we're having month-long millions and millions of dollars spent on month-long hearings in the Congress and not solving problems. We're just trying to point fingers and create blame. It's a crapped up world we're in right now, and I pray for it. And, that brings up the fact
they're creating, last point on this small business stuff, they're creating a lot of collateral damage on businesses and families that they probably won't even realize or understand until 3-5 years down the road. I mean, I know a lot of family-owned businesses that have second, third, fourth generation businesses that will never survive and will never be able to come back. And these people get on TV and elected officials talk about everything else under the sun except that. And our president says, just lower your prices, and is so out of touch with the basic needs and issues going on, at least in rural parts of the state that I live in. And it's really, really sad. We need a voice, to stand up and to remind people that collateral damage is not something that we want to continue being in Southside Virginia.
Yeah, and before we leave our leaning right moment, we do want to say our condolences, of course, and our thoughts and our prayers. I'm not afraid to say that. Are for every family member of the 6 innocent parade goers that were needlessly shot and killed in Chicago and Highland Park during a 4th of July parade. Bobby Cremo is the murderer. Obviously, we see, we have gun control laws in Illinois, some of the tightest. I don't think we need to get in a deep dive about that, but, we've done it their way on gun control laws. Those don't seem to work. Conservatives always think about, mental health and making sure that our media is not making superstars out of murderers like they tend to do. And this kid, looks like from his Facebook pages, his posts, and whatever, wanted fame, and he was going to get fame by shooting up a 4th of July parade and shooting innocent bystanders. It's now reported he wore women's clothing and fired over 70 rounds. Conflicting stuff. He's wrapped up in a Trump flag or this or that. Ultimately, a murderer is a murderer, but what we have to do is get to the core problem that's causing it. It's not the gun. It's the person that holds it. But we are certainly thinking about and praying for all of those families and for the ones that are now in heaven.
There's never anything positive that could come out of a tragedy like that, but I'll just say 2 things. Number one, I appreciate you bringing up the point that the state of Illinois has some of the tightest, most restrictive gun laws in the United States, and didn't stop this person from creating all this carnage. But if there's one thing that will come out of it, hopefully, is that it'll hopefully put more attention to the actual violence that happens in Chicago and surrounding areas every single day. Because there's people getting shot and killed in that city, in and around that city all the time, and not enough attention is paid to it, maybe because it's not the right type of murder, or I don't know why. I hate the fact that we're seem to be accepting a certain amount of this. So if nothing else, maybe this situation and the attention that it's going to bring to that area and violence will help bring more attention to some of this violence that happens in that state and in that city, in that area every single day. It needs more attention brought to it, and I hope that the attention that this tragedy is getting will help shine a brighter light and help some of these families that not only these 6 families and the other people injured yesterday, but the families and the people affected by the senseless, cowardly acts of crime that happen in and around Chicago every single day needs more attention.
Amen, brother. Amen. Okay, well, that does it for the very serious Leaning Right moment, brought to you by Charlie's Waterfront Cafe, owned by my friend Tom Graziano. He's also got a great bakery, but they haven't sponsored us yet. But let's get to your turning left moment. We have a sponsor.
I can't wait.
Go ahead.
Can I read this sponsor? Y'all ready?
Okay. Yeah. Go.
All right.
Turn off the sound.
Hermie Sadler's.
Turn off the sound, Brad. Pace-O-Matic makes great games and everybody enjoys to play. Goodbye, everybody. No. Okay. Go ahead.
Mic back on?
Yep.
Brad? Okay. The turning left moment is proudly sponsored by Laura Stanley and Vista Installations. Laura has been running a successful window and door installation company and babysitting politicians for over 12 years. I am so proud to welcome Laura and Vista Installations as the proud, did you hear me say proud,
yes,
sponsor of the Turning Left moment on the Leaning Right and Turning Left podcast with Sadler and the Senator. Welcome to our fine sponsor.
Vista. Vista. All right.
All right. A couple things to discuss. I got a text from you the other night. I know you and I both are big Ryan Newman fans. He's driven for us in the Sadler Stanley Racing car back at the Wheeling Modified Tour race back at Richmond a couple months ago. Well, he got a big win this past Saturday night in the Superstar Racing Experience SRX series up in Stafford, and he won the race. That was good enough, great, all that. But you were most excited, it seemed to be, for his Victory Lane pictures, and not only the Victory Lane pictures of him. Forget Ryan. You were focused in on his daughters and the attire they had on. Were you not?
I was. Actually, I was just watching the TV show live, of course, recording it because I love SRX series, and they had a great run at South Boston. Great race. It got chippy. It was hot. People were getting mad at each other. It was good kind of racing, and Stafford didn't disappoint either. And I know Ryan, I texted back and forth with him. He'd gone up and run the modifieds earlier, and so he got used to that track a little bit, and then ran SRX on Saturday night. And that was a great race. And the way he poured to the front and fought, the two heat races were great. The final 75 lapper was great. But then he wins, and you can just see how happy he is that he's won. And the joy is also on his face because his two daughters are with him, and that had to be a great feeling for him. I know that means a lot to him. His daughters are his world. And they come up, right there at Victory Lane, and he's drinking his Coca-Cola, and he's got his, fire suit on. He's got a grin ear to ear. And then my youngest Chandler goes, Dad, look at her shirt. And on her shirt is the Sadler Stanley Racing, SS Racing.
Get it right.
Logo merch sweatshirt that we had given Ryan. We'd given a whole bunch of the SS Racing merch when he came and tested at Caraway, and we interviewed him in our earlier podcast, which was a great interview. It's The Rocket Man. You can find it in our episode library. But there was his daughter wearing SS Racing, Sadler Stanley Racing, with the big yellow Virginia, just as you and I designed. And the clip was going away, and I'd missed it, and then it came back, and there she was. And so I captured it and took pictures of it and sent it to you. We made national TV on CBS on a Saturday night. And Ryan, I said, thanks for the shout out there too. And he said, see what you get for giving us free stuff. And that was great.
And I congratulations on the win also, but I did talk to Ryan too the following day, because I know, Ryan's won some big races, and he's, well established. His credentials and record speaks for itself. But for him to have his daughters be there with him to experience that, go to Victory Lane with him to experience that type of situation with their dad, especially, let's be honest, after what happened to him at Daytona a couple of years ago, his daughters went through that.
Yeah.
They, it probably hadn't been the easiest thing for them to get back to the racetrack and watch their dad out there, racing. And so I know Ryan was looking for something to try to erase that memory as much as possible from Daytona to something more positive. So for them to be there with him, go to Victory Lane on that kind of a stage, on live network television, and do all that, for them to experience that with him, I know he was tickled. So I'm happy for him and his family in that regard. And for us to get a little TV time for the Sadler Stanley Racing logo on network TV, that was just icing on the cake.
Yeah, that was great. And we put it up on our Leaning Right, Turning Left podcast Facebook page where you can see it there. It's on our SS Racing Facebook page. And you can always go to SadlerStanleyRacing.com and check out all the great events that we involve ourselves in as we talk about short tracks, saving short tracks and small businesses and skill games through our platforms of the podcast and also our open.
All right, be quiet for a second. It's time for another sponsor mention. The Turning Left moments here on the podcast are sponsored by Laura Stanley and Vista Installations. Just to make sure people understand, Laura has been running a successful window and door installation company and babysitting politicians for over 12 years. Okay, so.
Just not going to stop, aren't you?
Ryan's stuff was fun, but put it in reverse, Terry. That's a funny July 4th,
Yeah, I like it.
Put it in reverse, Terry. That's the actual, believe it or not, that's the name of my family group chat. Put it in reverse, Terry. Back to last Wednesday night, the Smart Modified Tour got back on track after a break to allow the modified competitors to compete over at Bowman Gray. I think you and the wife went down to Caraway to support Sadler Stanley Racing. We got back on track and things started off pretty good, qualified pretty good. Drew got the pole, started P1, dropped the green flag, led some laps, did all that. And then what happened? You were there, so I'll let you give us a report.
I'm actually going to have Brad play the clip from Flow Racing. We're on lap 27. He's leading. He's on the outside. We got this jackleg on the inside that keeps hitting the bumper, or I'm hitting the curb on the inside of turn one. And he hit the bumper going in turn one and out of turn two, drifted up the track a little bit, and then looked like he just turned right because he thought he'd cleared us. This is what happened on Flow Racing.
Laps away from the stage break. Into the pace-o-matic restart zone they come. 7 laps to go to the stage break.
Yeah, you said that. We're not even done in stage one just yet. We've already had 3 caution flags.
Whoa!
My goodness, Jonathan
in
Brown.
the air. Cars spin behind them. That's Coulter that's gone around. Brown got kicked up to the outside wall after Spencer Davis washed up wide. How's this restart going to play out?
How about that? Not a way to watch your equipment go up. I mean, it went on its side. It was.
Yeah. I had some friends here at the beach, and we were watching the race. And when I saw the roof of our car facing straight ahead into the camera, that's when I turned the TV off. So.
And it got some significant damage. Our driver, Jonathan Brown, who handled that wonderfully, I think, and wagged his finger at the bad driver there that got around. He was racing really hard early on. The guy that wrecked us, Jonathan, was running his race. The car was looking so good. It was going to be a really good night for us. But quite frankly, that was like the first of many wrecks. In fact, the next wreck, Tommy Baldwin's team got in the back of the guy that wrecked Jonathan Brown and sent him spinning and ended his night. And then near the end, and after that wreck, we went home. And I'll explain, we went back to the hotel after about lap 24, 25. And but then huge wrecks all night. In fact, in 98, they're almost out of gas. They'd run so many, probably 30, 40 caution laps. They don't refuel in the pits for safety reasons, and it makes for a nicer and fun race. And Bobby Labonte runs out of gas. He's in the outside. He's wiggling his car trying to get, I think, whatever fuel he's got left in that vehicle. And a huge 12-car pileup erupts right at the start-finish line. And that race, which was supposed to start at 8, 9 o'clock, and it was called on lap 98 at about 1 o'clock in the morning. It was a long night for Smart Series Tour, but it was good racing. I mean, it was really in between all the crashes, and everybody who likes crashes would love that race. You can see it on Flow Racing. Great membership to get, and it was a great race in between, but wasn't good for our team.
Not good for our team, and so a big setback. So our guys are working. I actually spoke to Phil Stefanelli this morning. We're trying to get a handle on the extent of the damage of our 22 car, and we talked about all this stuff, problems with the country, but parts are hard to get, things are hard to get, so we're trying to figure out how, if and when we can get that car repaired, because next up for our guys hopefully is North Wilkesboro, and but we've got to try to get our stuff ready to go race at North Wilkesboro, while at the same time still being ready to get back on track for the Smart Modified Tour and get back on track and try to win that championship. But a tremendous setback for our team. But it's part of racing. Our guys will fix the car. We'll get back out there and get it done. I also want to congratulate Tyler Reddick. for getting his first ever Cup Series win. He won at Road America this past weekend. Anytime a driver gets a first win in any series, especially the Cup Series of NASCAR, that was fun to watch as well. The race at Road America wasn't that exciting, to be honest, but Tyler
boring.
He got the win.
Yeah,
he got the win in the trophy, and so we're happy to see that. Our Sadler Stanley Racing guys will get back going, try to get us fixed up and get us back on track, and we'll see where it goes from there.
And we hope we get all. I'd love to see 2 cars out. You know how I feel about getting. I know the cost. Get 2 cars out to North Wilkesboro. Want Ryan Newman to be one of them. Jonathan Brown to be the next one. We got 2 nights anyway, so maybe we run one with Ryan the first night and Jonathan with the second night. We can figure it out, Hermie. I promise you this. But we have a new member of the Sadler Stanley Racing family. When we went to Caraway, my family was there, my wife and my son and I, and on a Wednesday night, and we were getting in the car to go get some dinner and go watch the race, get there nice and early. We'd driven down from Virginia. We're in North Carolina, and my son hears this meow, and we look down, and there's this little charcoal gray kitty, all gray, tiny, dehydrated, really in distress. Eyes were all gummed up, and was really not going to make it. And we looked at it and it came over to my wife, and obviously took a shine to her, and like it was asking for help. And so we looked at each other, and we say, well, if we come back and the cat's here, well, the cat wasn't going to last much longer. So we took it, snuck it into the hotel, went to Walmart, got all the stuff, rehydrated it, fed it, took care of it, put it in the bathroom in the hotel, went off to the race. Luckily, not luckily, it was luckily for the cat. We were out of the race after last 23, so we came home early to watch the rest of the race there, got some snacks from Sheetz, took care of the cat. And now we have a new addition, which you can also see on our SS Racing Facebook page and our Leaning Right, Turning Left Moment podcast Facebook page. And we named the cat after our driver, Jonathan Brown. So the cat's name is JB, John Boy. And so we've got a new member of the family, but we had a bad time in Caraway, but saved a little life in the Caraway parking lot of a hotel, and now we have another cat at the house. So just wanted to pass that along. JB just got a checkup, and it looks like he has an upper respiratory problem and worms, but we're taking care of that as well for the kid. So there you go.
Well, all in all, you guys are good Samaritans and rescued a pet on the trip, so that in itself made the trip a success on what otherwise was had to be a miserable trip to Caraway.
Yeah.
Speedway with the on-track part of it. But anyway, that's our turning left moments. We'll get back on track. Keep everybody updated here on the podcast as we prepare for North Wilkesboro here in a couple of weeks. I also want to mention before we go to break, before we bring our guest on, that Pace-O-Matic is more than an entertainment company. We are part of the community, giving back, helping our communities grow and thrive. That's why Pace-O-Matic is a proud supporter of the Smart Modified Tour and this podcast, because Pace-O-Matic believes in supporting the neighborhoods we work in. To learn more about Pace-O-Matic and the work we're doing, visit us at www.paceomatic.com. We appreciate Pace-O-Matic and their support
Absolutely
of this podcast, Senator, and Sadler Stanley Racing. And I think we've covered a lot in our leaning right and turning left moments. You got me going again on the leaning right, issues facing small business, not only across the Commonwealth of Virginia, but also across the country. But that's what we're here for, to keep people informed.
That's right. And I got a brand new little kitten from the racetrack. I always remind people, let them into your lives. They have such a joy about life. They'll renew your spirit in life as well. Adopt, don't shop. And always do your best to rescue and take care of our companion animals, just like Hermie and I do with the Envigo Beagles, the 4 Envigo Beagles that he and I have, 2 apiece, that we love so much. And those dogs are going to be coming up for adoption as well. So if you need or want a beagle that is rescued from a place that was breeding it for scientific purposes, you can contact my office, Chad Monday, the Senate Legislative Office at 540-721-6028. We're going to go to break now because we've got Congressman Morgan Griffith waiting in the lobby, and we're going to let him in and have an incredible conversation about the United States of America, still the greatest place on earth. We'll be right back. Hi, this is former NASCAR driver Hermie Sadler. Support for our Leaning Right and Turning Left podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the very best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 4 million men worldwide who have trusted Manscaped with their exclusive offer to you. If you order from manscaped.com and put in promo code Sadler, you'll get 20% off your order and free worldwide shipping. That's a great deal. That's entering promo code Sadler, S-A-D-L-E-R, when you place your order with manscaped.com. Gentlemen, you will never regret your purchase, and neither will your friends down there. All right. It's not Hermie. It's Bill Stanley. I don't even do his accent very well, but when it comes to talking about these products, Hermie gets a little shy about talking about his nether regions, downstairs in the basement there, but I'm not afraid, because in the mail we got from Manscaped, the Performance Package 4.0, when it arrived, it was a game changer. When you get the Performance Package 4.0, you open up the box. Inside the package, you're going to find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and even a travel bag to hold all your stuff in. Now, let's talk a little bit about the trimmer first, the Lawnmower 4.0. This is the future of men's grooming. When the grass gets tall, you want to be riding a great lawnmower to make sure it's cut right, stays right, and looks right. Am I right? I'm right. With this 4th generation trimmer, it features a cutting-edge ceramic blade, which reduces grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof and has a 400K LED light right there at the end of the trimmer. So when you need a more precise shave and you need to be watching where you're going, that light is a big helper. Now, you thought that was good, but now I'm going to take your grooming game even further to the next level. The Performance Package 4.0 also features the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. Let me tell you, gentlemen, as you get older, those nose hairs start growing and the ear hair starts growing, and you need to take care of it. That Weed Whacker is waterproof. It has a proprietary skin-safe technology. It helps reduce nicks, snags, tugs, and all those delicate areas right there, and makes you look good. You don't want those embarrassing nose hairs to be coming out when you're trying to talk to somebody. You want them trimmed up. This is the product for you. And in that bag, in that package, the Performance Package 4.0, there's the Crop Preserver deodorant and the Crop Reviver ball toner. Those things are going to change the way you approach your hygiene game. I'm serious. Trust me when I say this. Your doodads are going to thank you for this. Stay fresh, stay dry, stay toned. That's what we have to do the older we get. This is a grooming kit for men of all ages, from 20s to my age in the 50s. You cannot miss this opportunity. And when you buy the Performance Package 4.0, Manscaped even throws in the 2 free gifts, the Manscaped Boxer Briefs and the Shed Travel Bag. And when you put on the Boxer Briefs, I'm telling you, you're bringing your comfort level up. They were great. I'm not a boxer brief kind of guy, but I put them on, and I tell you what, they are so incredibly comfortable. So, gentlemen, it's time to take care of yourself. So go to manscaped.com. That's manscaped.com, and get 20% off your order and free shipping when you enter the promo code Sadler, S-A-D-L-E-R. That's right. Get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code Sadler, S-A-D-L-E-R, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use that promo code Sadler. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with our great sponsor, Manscaped.
Hi, folks. This is Hermie Sadler. Thanks for listening to our all-new podcast, Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator. I hope you are enjoying the show as much as Senator Stanley and I enjoy bringing it to you. Whether you're a family traveling together or a truck driver hauling freight up and down the highway, I hope you will take the time to visit one of our Sadler Travel Plaza locations in Virginia and North Carolina. Sadler Travel Plaza locations are licensed dealer locations for Pilot Travel Centers, and we also carry Shell Motiva petroleum products for our four-wheel friends. We pride ourselves on providing one-stop shopping for service, food, and entertainment. Our food options include Five Guys Burgers and Fries, Quiznos, Dairy Queen, Hermie Sadler's Faux Show Bar and Grill, Victory Lane Restaurant, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Dunkin' Donuts, and much, much more. Our locations include Sadler Travel Plaza in South Hill, located off I-85 at exit 12. The Sadler Travel Plaza of Emporia, which is conveniently located on exit 11B off I-95, and Sadler Travel Plaza on Highway 58 in Suffolk. We also have our North Carolina location, Sadler Travel Plaza in Dunn, North Carolina. That's exit 75 off I-95. We appreciate all of our customers. And Bill and I appreciate you listening to Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic.
Hey, this is Bill Stanley, Hermie Sadler's sidekick on this podcast. When I'm not in Richmond at the Capitol or doing this podcast, my real job for the past 27 years is as a trial attorney with the Stanley Law Group. Here at the Stanley Law Group, we represent our clients in every courthouse in the Commonwealth. No problem is too small for us to solve. No case is too big for us to win. Whether it's criminal charges, traffic offenses, civil disputes, litigation matters of any sort, we handle it all. We make sure that we treat every client like family because they are to us. Your problem is our problem. Your success is our success because we hate to lose more than we love to win. And believe me, we win a lot. Don't believe me? Go ask Hermie. I'm his favorite lawyer, and he hates lawyers. So give us a call at 540-721-6028 and let us help you. Or visit our website at www.vastanleylawgroup.com. That's www.vastanleylawgroup.com. At the Stanley Law Group, we'll make sure we're the lawyers that you swear by and not at. Welcome back to Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator. I'm State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm still leaning right.
And I'm former NASCAR driver and Fox Sports analyst Hermie Sadler, and I'm turning left with a new sponsor. Also, I'll read that again in a few minutes, Bill, just for your
and we've got another sponsor which Hermie is just already in love with that we'll have to have a nice ad on that one as well as we close out the show later. But we've got a very special guest, a friend of mine for decades. It's one of the great Virginia statesmen, a man who's given himself to public service, dedicated his life to public service, has made such a difference in the Commonwealth of Virginia for so many years. His resume is incredible, being elected to the House of Delegates in 1994, became the majority leader for the Republican Party of the House of Delegates from 2000 to 2010, ran against Boucher, a Democrat congressman in the 9th District, who'd been there forever, won an upset victory there, and has been our congressman in the 9th Congressional District in the Commonwealth of Virginia ever since. He is so good, so scary, so awesome, they don't even run against him anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, our great congressman of the 9th District, Morgan Griffith. Welcome, Morgan.
It's good to be with you all. I'm looking forward to it.
And we're looking forward to talking to you, too. And so we said earlier in the podcast, his wife, Hillary Griffith, was my law partner, one that left on good terms. Usually I kick him out, but she went on to become a judge, so she wouldn't have to be my law partner, and she wouldn't have to be involved in politics in Morgan's life anymore and go to any of those events. So she had an ulterior motive. But one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. Good thing she's probably not listening to this right now because I deny that I ever said that I loved her that much. But I do. Hillary is great. She makes me laugh, and I always love making her laugh because she's got the best laugh on the planet. So, I thought
I've got my first question is very important, Congressman. Senator Stanley says everything he knows about politics and everything he says and does is because of you. Can you confirm or deny that?
I will deny that. He is much better than me in many things.
Wait. Repeat that part.
I said he is much better at many things, particularly when it comes to politics and that sort of thing.
That is BS. I hate to say BS to a congressman. I will tell you one of my favorite stories because, I talked to him, had been in local politics. I was a 5th District Congressional Chairman for 4 years. Worked with his 9th District Congressional Chairman. We used to have bets on who would win a wider victory for our candidate, Morgan or Robert Hurt. I always ended up owing her dinner. Michelle Jenkins, she's now a judge too, so everybody just runs away and becomes judges. But there was a time when Robert was retiring from Congress, and I was getting calls from some people who were wanting me to run for the congressional seat in the 5th District. Now I thought, well, great. I get to serve with Morgan Griffith, and this is great. And he calls me up and he says, okay, so this is what you have to, this is what will happen. You got to raise a lot of money, and you're in there all the time, and it's so expensive up there. I sleep in my office, and you have to go 2 buildings to go, get a shower every morning. And he starts talking about halfway through. He goes, I'm not doing a really good job, am I, convincing you? And he says, you're not going to see your kids very often. You're going to be all over. And he helped me make the right decision, which was not to run for Congress. But I appreciate his sacrifice that he makes. 2011, I ran for the Senate to replace Robert Hurt, who was then in Congress. Greg Habib runs for your seat. You're in Congress. What a heck of a race that was, and what a whirlwind that was in changing Virginia politics on the congressional level. Talk to us a little bit about, I've given you a little bit of the bio of you. Talk to our audience a little bit about yourself and what it's like to be a congressman in today's world.
Well, I don't know. There's a whole lot to say about me that hadn't been out there before. I was in the Virginia House of Delegates. I felt early in my life that what I wanted to do was to be in law and politics. There was a time when I thought that it was just going to be law and that I would be in one of those supporting roles and not actually be in office. And that would have been fine. And then a window opened up. Steve Agee decided to retire. He's now on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. But he decided to retire from the House of Delegates, and he called me up and said he's going to make an announcement in a week or so and that I should be ready. And we went off and ran for that seat. And then in 2010, I just kept feeling that was something that I was supposed to do. And I'd think all day about it and think this is not a good idea. There were lots of cons. My predecessor, Rick Boucher, good man, had been in office for 28 years. He and I didn't agree on a lot of things philosophically, and he had taken some bad votes. In fact, he took one vote on cap and trade that was, I thought, just horrible for the district because, as you know, much of the district made its income, at the time, about a third of the district made its income off of the coal industry. And he voted for cap and trade, which was going to be devastating for the coal industry. And I looked over at Hillary that morning and said, Rick Boucher's going to retire. And then I went out and looked for a candidate to run against him, and I couldn't find one who I thought had the experience or the ability. And so every night I'd go to bed, and I'd wake up in the morning thinking, you really ought to run. And then during the day, I'd think of all the reasons why I shouldn't. And in the end, it just became clear that I should get into the race and run. And it was certainly no cakewalk. It was a lot of long hours, and Hillary gave me permission to go do it. And in fact, she told the Associated Press, and I may get the quote wrong, but she told the Associated Press something along the lines of, and this was embargoed until after the election, but she said, I don't think he's going to be able to win, but I figured I'd let him have the time to go scratch that itch, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. And
That's perfect, Hillary.
And we ended up winning. And you'll love this one since we're talking about Hillary. So Greg Habib, who ended up taking my place in the Virginia House of Delegates, was down at the state registrar's office with the Republican lawyers group, making sure that everything was being done according to the rules and regulations in place. And Hillary's watching the results coming in, and she calls Greg up and she says, Greg, I'm looking at some of the precincts coming in the coal counties, and clearly they've got them posted backwards because Morgan's winning in places that Republicans never win. And Greg had to tell her, nope, looks like he's going to win this race. But I wasn't watching it that closely. She was in there watching the results saying, come look at this, come look at this. And I was like, hey, I've done my bit. I finished at 7 o'clock. The polls closed. I had my feet up on the desk and was relaxing. And then the AP called it. So it was a fun night.
It's a great night. It was a great, great night. I'm also reminded of a story. When I ran for the special, it was a primary, and Greg Habib and I were running. I think somebody guessed primaried him too, to replace you, and I was running to replace Robert Hurt. And just to show you kind of my area of rednecks and people that kind of know politics but don't, I was announced the winner of the 7-way primary. I go to the victory party. There's 2 guys out there who are always at the bars and at Smith Mountain Lake, and they're kind of drunk. They had a couple beers, and they're like, hey, man, congratulations. You just won the state senate. I said, no. It's only a primary. They're like, And they go, no, man. But the guy who's running against you is last name Habib, man. You got that all set. Nobody down here is going to vote for a guy named Habib. I'm like, okay, guys. No, Greg Habib's a really good guy. He's out in Roanoke. We're not running against each other. But we were celebrating your victory and Robert Hurt's victory, and certainly those were important because we were able to take the Senate or the House of Representatives back after the Obama sweep. And so that was some important things. Now I have a guy on this podcast right here who I've been talking about wanting to run for the new 7th Senate Republican district, Senate district there. Might be running against Louise Lucas. What advice would you give, say, a former NASCAR driver and former Fox News analyst, TV analyst? What advice would you give him about running for office for the first time if he was thinking about doing that?
Well, what I always tell candidates to do is to decide why you're running and then look at the demographics of the district. I mean, there are some districts that Republican just cannot win. I don't know the demographics of that district, but I would say that you always want to look at the demographics. Now, if you're running because you want to get a message out there and you want to do other things, even if the demographics are bad, I would say run. But always go into it with your eyes open. I've seen too many candidates who run in tough districts and don't have the right information to decide what is the reason I'm running for. Now, when I made that decision, and everybody thought I was crazy to run in the 9th district back in 2010, I looked at the demographics, and we were behind in the polls. So you got to keep an eye on the polls. Don't pay attention to the top line number. Look down and crunch through all the crosstabs. Because what we found, I was behind, according to my own poll, 18 points on the 1st of October. But what we found in the crosstabs was most of the people who were undecided, and there was a large number, consider themselves to be Republicans or consider themselves closer to Republican ideology. And even some of the people who thought they were going to vote for Boucher were actually people who thought of themselves as Republicans. So in the last month of the campaign, we focused on making sure people knew our position and the fact that I was the Republican candidate. And one of the things we said, and you may be able to say this in your district too, was if you want to change Washington, you have to change Congressman. Because they liked him personally. That's why I said, he was a good fella. He's not a bad guy. And they liked him personally. But when we were able to show them that his votes were with, Obama and Pelosi and cap and trade and those types of things, most of those folks who were undecided and some of the ones who originally thought they were for my opponent came home. So you got to pay attention to the demographics, and those crosstabs are all important because if you're at 30% going into it, or even 20%. That's not bad if there's a lot of folks out there you can get. If the district shows up to be, they think of themselves as Democrats, and it's 70%, then you might have a problem. Now, the other thing you have to look at it, because people don't realize this is happening, and it is, particularly in the minority communities, the Hispanics, and some in the African American community. If you look at them and they identify as Democrats, but they also identify themselves as Christians who attend church on a regular basis, those are votes we can get because the new far, far left, it's not the party that Bill and I knew back in the 90s and the early 2000s. That far, far left has pulled away from the values that even many of the folks who would consider themselves to be moderate liberal Democrats, they are still God-fearing, God-loving people, and they're leaving that, the modern Democrat Party is leaving them. Now, Louise Lucas has been around a long time. She's got great name recognition. The district lines are a little bit different, so we'll have to see how that works out. But those are the things I would look at. And then last but not least, it's a lot of work. And in a Senate district, you've got to knock a lot of doors. Consultants disagree with me on this, but I believe in knocking all doors if I'm the candidate, if I'm in a particular neighborhood. I mean, obviously, if it's the district chair for the Democrat Party, you might not want to knock that door. But there's a lot of folks who will vote for you if they've met you and they've never met your opponent. And if you get out there and you say hi to them and you talk to them you know, you'll have a harder sell with people who consider themselves to be Democrats still. But if they've met you and they've never met the other person, you got a 50-50 chance going into the voting booth.
I can't tell you how much the thing that you said about, you know, thinking all day or seeing signs or signs telling you that maybe you shouldn't do it. Then you wake up the next day like, oh, I got to do this. And I can't tell you, that is so true in this process that I've been going through. You see you watch the news and you see the hits coming all day, and some of the things that may be, you know, maybe not in my favor and things of that nature. And you like, it's just too much. That's just too much to overcome. And then I wake up in the middle of the night or first thing the next morning, and I go right back to where I was before. It's like somebody in rural Southside Virginia has to stand up, because we have been so underrepresented. You know, our seat at the table has been vacant as far as I'm concerned, you know, for the last 8, 10, 12 years. And now that I'm back off the racetrack and off TV, back running the family business, I'm starting to see more clearly how some of these policies are affecting small business and my employees and my associates and things. And it's like there's a terrible disconnect between the people making policy in Richmond and how it's actually affecting these people, you know, on the ground here in areas like Emporia and Greensville and Brunswick County and Southampton County. I have businesses in all these areas, and, you know, also service loggers and farmers and construction workers, delivering them diesel fuel and those kind of things, and they're just getting crushed. And it's like nobody's paying attention to it, you know. So I tell Bill about 6 o'clock every afternoon, I said, you know, Bill, it's just, you know, I don't know how I can pull this off. And then when I think about all the destruction and the collateral damage that's happening, you know, to businesses in Southside Virginia, I'm like, hell, if it ain't me, it's got to be somebody else, you know, to bring attention to it. So I hear exactly what you're saying. And also, I'm sure we share a friendship with this other guy I'm getting ready to mention, but I share a seat on a bank board of a local community bank with Kirk Cox. And he said the same thing that you said about knocking on doors, even doors you may not think you can get. If they know you, he said the same thing you said. If they know you, that gives you a shot. And I appreciate you saying that.
You know, it's something I tell candidates all the time. When I first ran, I would say to my Democrat friends, when they would, you know, folks I'd knock on, they'd say, well, I'm a Democrat. And I would say, you know what, this is America. I'm absolutely fine with that. If I get elected, I'll be glad to serve you just as well. But I would say to them, but if my opponent doesn't knock on your door, when you walk into the voting booth, give me one more thought. That's all I'm asking today. Just think about it one more time. And who do you think's going to work harder? The person that didn't show up at your door or the person who did? And I'm convinced we got a huge number of those votes in all of my races whenever we've done that.
Yeah, there's no better political campaigners than Kirk Cox and Morgan Griffith, that's for sure. And when you get to Congress and you've been there now for a decade, I mean, what's it like? I mean, for an outsider, even somebody like me who serves in the Senate at the state level, and you served in the House of Delegates, we ran on a clock of 60 or 45-day sessions. We had to balance our budgets. We considered bills. We had long nights. We worked hard. But then we went home. It wasn't our career. We got things done. We debated things. We held different views, but you know, it used to be more we might have had different ways of doing things, but we all had the same goals in mind. What I'm seeing, and I think a lot of normal Virginians and Americans are seeing right now, is a very dysfunctional Congress. And you go up there all the time and maybe nothing gets done, or the perception is nothing gets done. And it just is a partisan poop house. It's just not what I see occurring at the state level. Talk to us about what it's like to be in Congress. What's Congress like? What's good, what's bad, and what's even the ugly?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I have always believed, but I don't want to mislead anybody listening to this to think that it will change. But I've always believed that we should have deadlines in our terms as well. That any bill that's really that important can be introduced, and of course Congress has a longer time period. But if we had the first 60 to 90 days to get bills introduced in any given year, and you had to finish them up before you left in August, I think would be a lot more efficient. You'd weed through the bad bills. And unfortunately, what happens is sometimes, not always, but sometimes, what's the bill coming up that week on the floor is determined by what's politically appropriate for the party in charge. That's true whether it's Democrats or Republicans. And as you know, in the Virginia House and the Virginia Senate, the bill gets out of committee. It doesn't languish around waiting for the leadership to decide to bring it to the floor. You've got a 3 or 4 day period before it gets there. I remember one time Bob Marshall saying, Mr. Speaker, where's my bill? It had been 4 days, and the Speaker had been kind of holding it because he didn't really like it, but it came up on the 5th day. So, I mean, here in Washington, you get a bill out of committee, you get consensus from Democrats and Republicans, and the bill gets out of committee, and then if the Speaker doesn't like it, they just hold it. It never comes to the floor. Well, that's no way to run a shop. I don't see it changing. I would love to think I could get it changed. I've tried. I'll talk about it anytime with anybody about how, if we have deadlines, things get done better. But I don't think that's going to change. As a result, there's a lot of things that don't get done in Congress that need to get done. The balanced budget would be great. That would take an amendment to the Constitution, and it would have to have exceptions in times of war and emergencies. But we don't even try to keep things on the balance as a general rule. I try to vote very conservatively, and a lot of my friends do. And of course, you have some things you have to vote for. As you know, you have advocated school construction, and the state of Virginia needs to spend money there. I voted for a bill that some of my colleagues voted against within the last couple of weeks that dealt with food, because we need to have some of those food programs out there. A lot of people in Southside and in Southwest Virginia are in food insecurity, and some of them don't have food, and changing some of the regulations about dropping lunches off at the school during the summertime and not having to stay and watch the kids eat the meal. There may be some abuse of that, but we don't have enough volunteers to get to all the schools if we don't do that. And so I voted for that bill, and that spent some money. I voted for a mental health bill that there were some parts of it that I didn't like, but overall it would help us with the mental health situations across the country, and I think that's very important as well. So sometimes you got to spend money, but you also ought to be taking a look at how much do you need to spend on this project and weighing it out like you all do at the state legislature. And there's never a discussion of that at the federal level. I mean, I'm not going to say there's not backroom discussion. Certainly the Freedom Caucus, of which I'm a member, and certain senators are talking about it, but we don't have a true across-the-board discussion of, okay, we only have so much money, what do we consider to be priorities? As a result, and you've heard me talk about this before, Bill, we're spending money for what I call retirement homes for wild horses and burros. I don't think that's a priority, but we're over $100 million. $100 million won't solve everything, but it's $100 million. I bet you'd take that for school construction, wouldn't you?
Every minute.
Yeah, and we're spending it
Every
on
bit of it.
retirement homes for wild horses and burros that have come off of the Bureau of Land Management land because we have too many of the wild horses and burros out there. And to me, that seems to be a huge waste of taxpayer money. We also are still teaching people, a bill that was put in the late 40s or early 50s to teach people how to empty the toilets on their boats. The federal government has a program where we spend money on making sure we have all kinds of printed pamphlets and train people to train other people how to do that. And I'm like, okay, I understand when you got out of World War II, there might have been a need for that because recreational boats took off. But most everybody who buys a recreational boat today can find out from their salesman how to clean out the toilet.
The Stanley Law Group's SLG Consulting, we bought a motor coach, and I watched something on YouTube how to clean out the bathroom there. So went out and bought the tube and learned how to go to one of those discharge stations. I don't think you need federal money to teach anybody how to do that, but you're exactly right. I mean, you get a lot more pork. They don't have earmarks anymore, but a lot of pork comes into those continuing resolutions, creep in there where this funding for weird stuff is going on. There doesn't seem to be ever an attempt to try to actually put out a budget anymore, either from the executive branch or adopt one. We're just spending money on continuing resolutions, it seems, and that's where a lot more waste, fraud, and abuse occurs. Would you agree?
Well, it certainly adds to it. It also makes it, for the agencies that we want to fund, like our military, it makes it very hard for them to determine whether or not they can purchase equipment or buy toilet paper because they don't know if they're going to have the money because on a continuing resolution, there's not an increase in there for them. And so if they need an increase to do something, it's sometimes difficult for them to determine what they can do and how they can do it. And once you slow down or stop a project for a few weeks, it takes more money to get it started up again.
Congressman, I wanted to kind of give you just a brief recap of why I would consider putting myself out there. I've lived my whole life in the public eye anyway, and experienced all of that. But, ultimately, Bill and I decided to sue Governor Northam over the skill game ban, which people that really pay attention understand. For me, it really had nothing to do with skill games. It had more to do with the government telling me I couldn't have them, but the casinos and Rosie's were, and that's the way it was going to be, and didn't give me a chance to fight for my business. That was the issue. But what I did, and what I thought was the right thing to do, I was watching the Virginia General Assembly one day, the Senate chamber, and Senator Janet Howell made a comment in one of her speeches and said that skill games were hurting Virginia lottery sales to the tune of $140 million a year. And I knew that wasn't accurate because I'm in the convenience store business and the truck stop business, and I had all the information gathered. I took all of my P&Ls, all of my profit loss statements, all of my lottery statements, my emails from my lottery representatives, all of that disputed that, and I went to see Louise Lucas, who, by the way, Senator Lucas and I have been friends. We were grand marshals of the U-Crops Christmas Parade back in 1993 together, and I've known her since then. Hadn't done a whole lot for my area, politically speaking, but that doesn't mean she's not a good person, and we're friends. But I carried all this stuff to Senator Lucas's office, and I set it on her desk, and I said, Senator Lucas, these skill games are providing revenue that, as we're battling through this, COVID and all these other problems, these revenues are really important to these small businesses. But more importantly than that, the information that Senator Howell has been given on this is inaccurate, and here is my information to show you that this has been, this is not accurate. All Senator Lucas said to me was, Hermie, you're going to have to go talk to Senator Howell. I said, well, you're representing my district. Will you go speak to her? She said, no, on this issue, you're going to have to go see Senator Howell. So myself and a gentleman named Scott Klepper, who at the time was working for Pilot Flying J truck stops, they have about 20 locations in Virginia. We walked down the hallway to Senator Howell's office, per Senator Lucas's instructions, and tried to set up a meeting. So Senator Howell's aide is working through a meeting, looking through her date book on when we might be able to have a few minutes to meet with Senator Howell. About halfway through going through the calendar, she looks at us and says, what's the subject matter you want to speak to Senator Howell on? And I said, we want to speak to her about skill games. And the aide looks at Scott Klepper and I both and says, well, Senator Howell is not going to be taking meetings on that issue. Quite frankly, she views people involved in that industry as somewhat sleazy. And I said, oh, okay. So we left. And so then I realized after that, Congressman, that the deal had already been done. The horse had left the barn. The decisions had been made as regard to skill games. They just didn't want to hear, the facts or the truth about all that. So they bagged me into a corner as far as the lawsuit's concerned. But I guess when people ask me, why would you consider, you've had this life and you've got successful businesses and you've got a family, and why would you want to do that? It's simply for me because I got shut out. I went over trying to go the right path through my elected official to get through, just to try to provide the arguments and get the information out there to have a good debate, about it, and try to bring personal stories and businesses that were going to be negatively impacted by this ban on these games. I just wanted them to have the proper information, and I was never given the opportunity to provide that correct information or to find out from Senator Howell, why is it that we're bound and determined to ban these games? And so that was the frustrating thing for me, and it was a big dose of reality, because and it probably will not work in politics, I don't know, but the way I've always been able to handle problems, whether it be with my race team, trying to figure out how to make my race car go faster, or whether it be my convenience store operators trying to figure out how we can do more business or better business or work on keeping the bathrooms clean or whatever. Whenever we had problems, I've just always believed in getting everybody in the room together and sit down at the table and talk. It didn't really matter if somebody had a completely different idea. Maybe my idea wasn't the best or whatever, but talk through, everybody get their ideas and concerns and things on the table, and I've always been able to find a way to get the room to come to some kind of an agreement that we could all live with. And it just doesn't seem like now that the temperature is right for that type of communication, whether it be Senator Stanley at his level or at your level. So I'm curious, do you think that is there room for somebody like that to be able to make that kind of change just by letting everybody talk and trying to find a way out?
I think there is. Now, when you talk about an industry, one of the things you have to realize is that somebody has to take the lead, but it sounds like you did, and you went to your senator. So you can't have 100 convenience store operators expecting to get a separate meeting with Janet Howell. But when you go to your senator as a leader in your community, because whether you're elected or not, as a business owner and somebody that's well known in the community, you're a leader. I think Senator Stanley would agree with me on this, is that one of the things that you would try to do, or at least try to use your influence to do, is to set that meeting up. You probably weren't going to convince Janet Howell, and Senator Lucas probably knew that, but at the same time, some advice on how to approach it, maybe go to another senator who might be more closely aligned with you, who could get to Howell, or just saying, let me see if I can get us a 15-minute meeting. You're going to have to be quick because things do move fast in the General Assembly. But I might be able to get you a 15-minute meeting. It might be at 7:30 tomorrow morning. It might be at 8:30 tonight. Hang tight. Let me see what I can do. And I suspect she could have gotten a call past the gatekeeper, the aide, to Janet Howell, who I served with many years and who's a nice lady. But I've got to believe that that's part of being the representative for an area, is that if you've got a community leader who says, I've got a problem. If I can't solve it, let me at least try to set up a time when you can talk to the person who could solve that problem. Would you agree with that, Bill? Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think, here's the thing that I've always found in politics when it comes to these issues and other issues, is that a lot of times it's not so much partisanship in the state level, it's more regionalism, where I think probably where you have in Congress more partisanship, polarization. We have polarization that occurs based on, we're in Northern Virginia, and South Side and Southwest Virginia don't matter that much to us. We forgot that you led the way in the Industrial Revolution. We turned farms into data centers up here in Nova, and everybody's rich, and we don't care that we make $106,000 per family of 4 average when yours is 36. They treat you kind of differently, and I think that's what I see here, a little bit of that regionalism in play, where Louise may have a bunch of constituents that do support Hermie's position, but Northern Virginia and Northern Virginia's leadership, which is pervasive in the House and the Senate, has decided, in the same way that they're not going to allow casinos in Northern Virginia, but they'll allow them down in Bristol and Martinsville in the lower, as they say, lower tier areas. But they make decisions for the rest of us in the same way that my dad used to say, he said it lovingly to me, though, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. And that's what I see going on with skill, what Hermie's talking about there, But the fact that his own local legislator just says, go talk to the one person who probably won't talk to you, is not just passing the buck. It shows a lack of care about your constituents, and it's ceding the authority and territory over those constituents and your district to the few leaders in Northern Virginia that don't give a crap about us.
Well, and again, demographics makes a big difference. So, do the polling or look at the polling data that's available out there and the information on the district. But it was an interesting thing that I found when I was running. Good guy, but Rick Boucher had apparently gotten to a point where he didn't think he had to talk to a lot of folks, and a couple people from his end of the district with some businesses, or the northern end of the district, but they were one of the businesses particularly was in the district, went down there to see him. They had waited months and months and months to get an appointment. They drove through a snowstorm to get down to Abingdon, and then with just himself and one aide in the office because the snow was up and everybody else was gone, he made them sit there for 20 minutes before he came out to greet them. Nobody else was there, no other appointments. And then he only gave them 15 minutes. One of those two individuals is a big Democrat donor. And when I ran, they donated to me because they were so personally offended that they had gone out of their way to try to do it the right way, just like you described with your skill games information. They'd gone out of forget the issue. They'd gone out of the way to do it the right way, and they didn't get heard. And that's why I had a person who's known as a Democrat donor he actually encouraged me to run and gave me money right out of the box. I'm not sure he voted for me after that first time, but by golly, he decided he was going to make a change. So you may find that.
What do you see as, and I know with so many things going on and so many moving balls around politics and government, but what are the, say, top three issues that have your attention now?
Well, and one of the things that Congress does, and it happens a little bit in the state legislature, is you become a specialist. So my committee is Energy and Commerce. That will drive some of my specialties. So even before the latest disaster created by the Biden administration, predominantly, it has been piled on by the situation in Ukraine. But the gas prices and energy availability, the fact that the Green New Deal is devastating for rural areas, it's devastating for folks who are just making an average living. The left is now saying things like, well, you wouldn't have these problems if you drove an electric car. Well, most of the people in my district can't afford to buy an electric car. And I tell people, when you talk about electric cars now, and this is number one, is of course energy availability and affordability. But when you talk about electric cars, what normally happens with people who make less income, good hard-working folks, but they just don't make the income, is they can buy that car that's 8, 10, 12 years old and keep it running and keep it moving when it's gas-powered. One of the problems that we haven't gotten to yet, because they haven't been around long enough, is that with an electric vehicle, when the car gets to be that age, at some point fairly soon after you hit that 10-year mark, that battery's going to go bad. And right now, the replacement batteries are $5,000 to $12,000. Well, if you're out looking for a $2,500 car, how are you going to then put into it a $5,000 to $12,000 battery? It's just not going to do anything but be devastating across the board. Gas prices have already gone up. Electric prices are going to be going through the roof over the next few years if we continue with these policies. And people aren't going to be able to afford cars. It is going to be devastating for rural and the less economic well-off. And that's number one. Number two, because of the committee that I have, is I desperately want to find ways that we can make medicines more affordable. Because energy and commerce, most people don't know it, that covers the policy, not the money the government spends, but the policy on health care. And so we want to find ways that we can make medicine more affordable. There's some things that I know we can do. Too complicated for the podcast today, but just know that I think there's a real problem with the system that we have as it's set up right now. We have PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. They started off good. It's a great thing if it's being done right. but now we have insurance companies who own pharmacies and pharmacy benefit managers, and the benefit managers control the market. There's like 6 of them that control 90 to 95% of the market. And they go to a drug manufacturer and say, let's say Eliquis, which is a blood thinning medicine, or Xarelto, which is another breakthrough medicine for people with blood clots. And they go to them and they say, you know what, you've got to raise the price on Xarelto or else we're going to shut down. And I'm not saying this is an actual example, it's a hypothetical. But you've got to raise the price on Xarelto or we're only going to sell Eliquis. Or you've got to raise the price on Eliquis or we're only going to sell Xarelto. So then the drug manufacturer gets the brunt of public ire because they raise the price. And the reason that they do it is because they're told, we want you to do it or we're not going to sell your product, and we control the market. Then what happens is the pharmacy benefit managers reduce that price for everybody who's in one of their plans so that it comes out looking like it's the same, except the pharmacy benefit managers take a percentage of the list price. So when the price goes up and they're taking a percentage of that price, they get a higher amount of money coming into them. So even though they've discounted it, it's still getting more money to them, and some people are paying more money. If you're not in one of their plans, or if you're in the donut hole, or if you don't have an insurance plan that covers medicine, then you're paying that higher list price, even though you didn't have to in the first place. So that's there's probably another 50 that I could go into. And then I would say number 3 is I want to find out what's going on. I want to find out what happened. And again, I could go on for hours. But my subcommittee that I hope to chair is the Oversight Subcommittee for the Energy and Commerce Committee. We have jurisdiction over Dr. Fauci and the NIH and Dr. Fauci's agency, the CDC. We need to know a number of questions there. And right now, the third party that the NIH contracted with, EcoHealth Alliance, isn't able to get out of China documents that are required to get U.S. money. We're not able to get them out of China. Why are we doing business with EcoHealth Alliance? And why are we having American labs who will have to comply with our request for the documents? Because you know what the biggest one that's missing is? A document on the number of deaths in humanized mice in 2018 and early 2019 from a coronavirus they were working on. The data is unavailable to our committee and others at this moment because Wuhan lab will not release it, and EcoHealth Alliance didn't get the documents as they were being created. I think we have a problem.
I wish you had been on the first segment we did, because Bill, made a comment to me or played a tape of and a social media post from President Biden. My family, just so you know, was in the convenience store, truck stop, restaurant business, and President Biden basically said, okay, if you're a convenience store operator, cut the price of your gas now. You have to do this. And so we presented information. We're averaging about 15 cents a gallon margin at the pump for what we're selling. As high as gas is now, credit card fees, which we absorb as the retailer, is 7-8 cents a gallon. So you take that off the top. So now we're working on about 7 or 8 cents a gallon margin. And I told Bill, forget everything else about a convenience store, but just the petroleum equipment itself for an average convenience store, $600,000 to $800,000 investment to pumps and canopies and things of that nature. And just add it up. Add a normal rural convenience store that maybe pumps 1,500 gallons of gas a day after credit card fees, making 8 to 10 cents a gallon, and you can't even pay for the petroleum equipment in the ground. Yet the president, instead of trying to maybe course correct and try to figure out how to get us all on a better path, just says y'all should cut your prices. And it's just really out of touch with a lot of people that are suffering these areas. But now that I know you're involved in those kind of things, that makes me feel better. And it's just really frustrating as a business owner when people just look at you and say, oh, you've got money, cut your price, when it's like, you got us here, but at least give us help. We'll try to get out of here, not just deflect blame all the time, which seems to be what they're doing.
Look, this is all a scam by the administration. I mean, I'm not sure Biden's smart enough to know that it's part of a scam. I've just never been impressed with his intellect. People say, well, is his mind going? I don't think it was ever there. So I don't know that he's I mean, that's why they kept him hidden. You just have to look at his whole history. He's never been smart.
Yeah.
That being said, I will tell you that the Secretary of Energy was in front of our committee, and we were talking about high gas prices. This was probably back in, might have been March, but I think it was April or early May. And Kelly Armstrong, who's a member whose family's in the oil business, said, well, now, Madam Secretary, you're not claiming there's a collusion amongst the oil companies to raise the prices, are you? And she looked around at the Democrat side and she said, well, I don't think anybody's claiming there's some kind of a collusion or conspiracy going on to have the oil companies raise prices. And the very next day, Biden's out there saying that's exactly what's happening. They're struggling because they know that the truth is that it is their policies and their actions which contributed the first $1.25 to $1.50 of increase, and about 25% of the increase since Ukraine is still based on Biden policies in this country. He goes overseas because the carbon people in his party, the people who think you can't use carbon ever in his party, say you can't do it. Oh, we can't do it here. We have to set an example. So he goes overseas and asks foreign countries, not all of whom are our friends, to say, you all produce more when we could actually produce more here in the United States if we had the right regulatory scheme. And if you start producing more and you encourage a new refinery, we haven't had a new refinery in decades built in this country, and you encourage the building of a new refinery somewhere, yeah, it's going to be expensive, and yes, they have to meet all the regulatory requirements to get it built. But if we were encouraging that as a federal government, and you saw things like that happening, including Keystone XL pipeline and all the ones everybody talks about, but bigger projects, even than Keystone XL, if they were encouraging it to happen, you would see prices start to moderate and over time come down. But as long as he has an anti-carbon philosophy, which he has said while he was campaigning and still maintains, as long as they have an anti-carbon, anti-oil, anti-natural gas philosophy, prices on the average citizen in the United States are going to go up at home, on the road, and that affects food. As you know, you're selling to truckers. They're hauling the food that goes to your grocery store that then you go in to buy and wonder why it costs so much, or why the bag has shrunk of the product you were buying, why it's now 2 ounces smaller than it was before. Well, thanks, Joe Biden.
Yeah. And this started with Joe Biden being asked at the NATO summit, how long is it fair to expect American drivers and drivers around the world to pay that premium for this war, those high gas prices? Biden's response was, as long as it takes. And then after he made the comment about guys like Hermie and people who own convenience stores should lower their prices, they're the ones gouging Americans, it's not his policies. He then had this guy, Brian Dees, who we played the clip, and I want to play it one more time for you, Congressman, if you don't mind. Brian Dees, the director of the Economic Council for the president, says some of the most amazing things. That it rips the curtain away on what they're really trying to do, what this is all about. And Brad, if you'll just play that clip real quick and let the congressman listen to it. And I want to get your take on it there, Morgan.
They say that this could be a long war measured in years, and I think everybody understands why this is happening, but is it sustainable? What do you say to those families who say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. This is just not sustainable.
What you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
The future of the liberal world order. What the hell is he talking about, Morgan?
Well, I mean, I hope he's talking about the 19th century liberals, which meant that, you had freedom for individuals. Now, if he's talking about the modern liberals, what he's talking about is they want to get rid of fossil fuels. So we're going to have to pay through the nose until we figure out how to do something else. And right now, as much as people want to use solar and wind, and I'm not against it, I know y'all aren't either, the bottom line is it's not ready to carry the grid. And the grid's not built to carry that type of power. I mean, it's one of the things most people don't realize, and the honest folks who are on the other side of the aisle will tell you when you ask their expert witnesses straight point questions, they're talking about having, us all be electric by 2050. We can't build the system by 2050. Cannot be done. Now, maybe by 2075, 2080, maybe you can get there. But if you can't build the grid to handle bringing, because it comes, and so people understand, when you have a coal-fired power plant, or you have a natural gas-fired power plant, or you have a nuclear plant, you've got a big plant at one location, so you spread the power out from that. When you're talking about wind and solar, you have numerous smaller locations. That power has to then be put into the grid, and you have to then take high voltage power from an entire region, not just from one plant. You've got to build a whole new power grid structure with new power lines, new high voltage power lines. And one of the witnesses, I asked the question, I said, can't be done in 20 to 30 years, can it? Yes or no? And she said, no, it cannot be done. And this was one of the liberal witnesses. But some of those who actually don't check their brain at the door will admit to you that they can't get it done in the time frame that this administration is claiming they can get it done. And I should note that part of what they do is they use their EPA and they use other agencies and they misinterpret the law to an absurdity, to a point that any person with any intellect knows is absurd. And then they wait 4 or 5 years before it gets to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court knocks it down, just as they did recently, related to the way they've interpreted the Clean Air Act, Section 111D. I've studied that section closely. This is not the first time they've lost cases. It's not the first time they've abused that section. They just make it up as they're going. You'll love this one, Hermie. They tried to regulate trailers on the tractor trailer because they claim that even though the law only allows them to do motorized vehicles, that since the trailer attaches to a motorized vehicle, they had jurisdiction over that too. I mean, that's how ridiculous it gets. I asked him next.
Unbelievable.
I asked him in a committee hearing, I said, so are you going to regulate the weight of the driver under that same theory? Because he's in the cab. And what they were doing is they were trying to get the weight of the trailers down, and it was, of course, going to affect the refrigerated industry, which carries so much of our food to market. But that's what they were after. They were trying to get the refrigerated units, get the weights down, and then they wanted to control over the refrigeration devices, not just to make sure they had the right coolant, but to control their energy usage.
How bad will it have to get for somebody in Washington to just simply say, we have to change our philosophy? There's no comprehensive plan and a lot of collateral damage. Will anybody ever say we misjudged or are we just along for the ride at this point?
Well, on the left, they will never, I don't think the far left will ever admit that. Now, what will happen is, at some point, we're going to have a disaster. We've already seen it in California, and they're trying to blame other people. I'm sure it's going to be the fault of the Ethiopians next. I mean, who knows? But when we start having brownouts and so forth, they're going to find somebody to blame for it. It's not going to be our fault. It'll be the folks in the Congo didn't mine enough cobalt to make our system work. But you know what? The American people, I mean, look, you can fool some of the people all of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. And we're about to get to that point where folks are like, all right, I followed you on this for the last 10 years, and you told me that everything was going to be okay. It's not okay. And I think we're going to see a little bit this fall. We'll see more of it later. If they continue to have control, we're going to have some major economic bumps, and we're going to have some people who don't have power when they need it. And eventually the American people will wake up and go, yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, and I think, I see so much polarization, partisanship, and I think you probably see it more. It's creeped over the Potomac River into the state government. I care about a lot of my Democrat friends on the other side of the aisle, even though we don't agree about almost everything. But what we're seeing is with the newer, younger generations in the State House, we're seeing this belief that they have to act like Congress and be partisan all the time. All I'm watching right now, and a lot of these things, is partisanship. You got the AOCs, the Ilhan Omars, who surprisingly got booed over the 4th of July weekend. at a Sudanese festival in her district. Maybe that's a sign of the times. But this polarization, they just don't know any limits on the Democrat side, to the point where I think they've just stretched it too far. And when you stretch a rubber band, it's going to come and snap back and hurt you. Is that what you're seeing, say, as you just kind of alluded to, in the upcoming elections? But are you seeing that also being overplayed at the congressional level as well?
Yeah, I do see that being overplayed. Unfortunately, the way Congress is set up and the state legislature works better. The way Congress is set up, leadership controls so much that a lot of members are hesitant to say anything, and the reason is they want to get their bill through on some other subject. So instead of going and telling the emperor that they have no clothes, they want to get their bill passed, so they'll just nod along with everybody else. They may not get out there and join the rhetoric or the chorus, but they're not likely to stand up and say, "Wait a minute, this is just wrong."
5 more minutes, and I don't see an end to it where you're coming from until they see a total rejection by the electorate. I think they're just going to keep, as you said early on in your interview here with us, it just has moved so far to the left that it leaves no more room, in the same way that Elon Musk kind of articulated in the drawing that he put up on Twitter. It's just, there's no more middle anymore for those people on the left. We had the Tea Party. I always like to say to my friends like Dave Marsden, Senator Marsden, we had the Tea Party, but they were in their 50s and 60s, and this was 10, 15 years ago. Okay, they're a little bit older. They're radical left, and Tea Party just didn't want to pay taxes, wanted more freedom, more liberty. But their left that is younger, coming out from indoctrinated colleges, 19 to 25. They're going to be around for a while. It's a small part of their party, but it is the most vociferous part of their party, and it takes all the oxygen out of the room for anybody else who might have a moderate stance, as if, and when AOC said, any pro-life Democrat does not belong in the Democrat Party, they should not be reelected. There's just no middle ground for them anymore.
Yeah, and that's true. You had the one Democrat who was pro-life did win his nomination, but by only a handful of votes. And then we've seen several of the more moderate Democrats who would occasionally, on some issues, like when there was a bill that was unconstitutional, not vote for it, get defeated. We've seen that a couple of times this year. It's a real concern. I mean, I'm not sure there is such. I mean, they may call themselves Blue Dogs, but I don't think there is any Blue Dog Democrat coalition anymore, because those used to be the moderate, almost conservative Democrats. I don't think any of them are left in reality. There's some who call themselves that because it's good in their elections to say that, but I don't see any of those left, except for maybe Cuellar down on the Texas border, who is pro-life. He's about it.
And he speaks reasonably even about some of the immigration issues. Just we've talked to you for almost an hour. We appreciate your time. We know you're busy. We know if you're not busy, then Hillary's going to take up the rest of your time with a honeydew list or things that your honor demands, right? So, and your schedule, a congressman is home. If I remember correctly, when we were talking offline one time a while back, you go in like Tuesday to Friday. Is that how you kind of run your weeks? And then the rest of the week, you're traveling your district. Is that how you do it?
Right. I travel the district a lot. In fact, now of course it was the 4th of July weekend, so that's an exceptional weekend. But we just from Friday to Monday, we clocked 800 miles just riding around the 9th district, and it was a lot of fun. I did a lot of great parades. But then there were parades I couldn't get to, so that means those folks are like, where was he? But yeah, I'm driving a lot around the district, going to Carroll County tonight. Feel free to join me. Going down there to give a speech at the party.
It's my son's birthday, so please tell him that's the only reason I'm not there. My son's turned 11, and this past weekend, because it was a 3-day weekend, and we were talking about it earlier, for the first time, I didn't do any July 4th weekend events, and because as well as I do, between your businesses and being a legislator and all of those things, it takes up so much time. You turn around and your kids are grown, and I kind of finally realized that was something that perhaps I was overlooking, as he is now turning 11, and it's so shocking to me. So I spent the weekend with him. In fact, took Thursday, Friday off, and it was the most wonderful weekend. And I know that as great as it was, and even if I tell my constituents, they're like, why weren't you in the parade? Where were you? You never come here anymore. And I, just like your district, you can go all over your district, and you've been in Patrick County, and then you go to Halifax, and you're like, where you been?
Right.
And
right.
so,
The district is so
it's
large.
amazing.
Let me say this too for folks listening, and Hermie, you're thinking about running. You have to make time for yourself. You just have to, and it's tough, and sometimes it's hard. You've got folks who have legitimate issues that they want to see you about, or you have folks who want you to be in their parade, or they want you to come to their car show, or this, that, or the other, and it's all good stuff, but you can't do it all. I had I won't name the congressman, but I had a congressman my first year in Congress, and I was trying to debate whether I missed a vote or something. It wasn't a big vote, but it was a vote, and I said, well, I hate to miss votes, but my son was going to be in his first championship swimming meet. Now, I understand that doesn't mean he's a champion. He was like 6 years old. He would dive in the water, and even if it was freestyle, he'd roll over on his back and do the backstroke and come in last. But it was the first time he was ever going to be in what we call the city county championship, which is all the teams get together and everybody gets to swim. And the congressman told me a story. He said, you need to go. He said, my daughter played varsity soccer in high school. And my team had important things for me to go to her sophomore year. And she started her junior year. And my team always had more important things for me to do than to go to her games. And I always thought, well, I'll make the next one. And then my daughter didn't play her senior year. So as much as I love my daughter, I never saw her play in a varsity soccer game. He said, you go to your son's swim meet. And I went. And
Amen.
Davis doesn't remember it, but I wrapped that towel around him when he finished, with tears in my eyes. Even though he was last, and even though he did do the backstroke when it was supposed to be the freestyle, legal, you can do whatever you want to. It's free. It was awesome. Great, and I will never forget.
Best thing ever.
And I'll always be indebted to that particular congressman for saying, you got to go. And sometimes, even when you maybe wanted in this parade or that parade or this festival, sometimes you just have to say, I can't make it.
Yeah, and it's made a big difference. I mean, I don't remember a July 4th weekend where I kind of picked up the end of the weekend, tried to go to the morning parade on July 4th so I could be there in the afternoon, but then didn't see them most of the weekend when it fell on a weekend. And this was a real eye-opener for me, and I never would have gotten it back had I not made that decision, and I don't regret it. So he's turning 11 today, so tell the great people in Carroll County who I represent half of them now. Now I'm going to, hopefully, if they elect me again, represent all of them. Tell them I give my best, and I'll be there at the next one. But
I'll do it.
We've really enjoyed our time. I have a whole list of questions, Congressman Griffith, that we're going to have to ask you back. We'll have to do this as a part one, if you don't mind. But I've really enjoyed this conversation. I know our listeners will as well. This podcast really seeks to not only inform but activate people in politics, get them involved in local short track racing, the things that we love to talk about. Our audience is growing exponentially. It's really amazing, but it's because we have great guests like you on, Congressman Griffith, and we really thank you for your service and your sacrifice in doing that service. I can't thank you enough. Hermie, what's your take on all this? You like him, don't you? You like him. You want him to be your congressman. You want to move out here, don't you?
No, this has really been great. Great show, but also very educational for me. And as Senator Stanley said, appreciate what you do, and I'm glad somebody finally that understands some of the frustration and the concerns that we have because of some of the policies that we're facing. I don't have to try to break it down. We're pro rural area, pro Southside Virginia, pro small business, and not that that's everything, but we certainly feel like some of these things are overlooked in the big picture when in Virginia, Northern Virginia, and sometimes Hampton Roads area seems to control so much. We've got to bring our concerns more to the table. And I appreciate you being on the show, but also listening to our concerns and appreciate what you do on the other end to try to
Howard Morgan Griffith, our great congressman, and now the congressman in Franklin County where I make my home. I'm now in the 9th District, and I sat on the redistricting commission, and we couldn't get a thing done. But at least every map that I saw put Franklin County in the 9th, so I felt pretty good to know that I'd have you as my congressman. Bob Good was always a great congressman anyway, but love having you as my congressman. So does all of Virginia and Southwest and Southside Virginia. Very grateful for your service. So thank you, Morgan. Thank you very much, and give my best to your family. And enjoy the great week. And we'll let's have this conversation again. There's so many important issues we didn't even touch upon in the production meeting notes that I've made here. We need to have you back. You were great.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Congressman. Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Morgan Griffith of the 9th District in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Another great podcast there, Hermie, in the books. And I think we continue to demonstrate why we are the best podcast in all the nation. Wouldn't you agree with that, Herm?
I would, and I want to say that Pace-O-Matic is focused on people having fun, but it's also committed to strengthening our community, supporting local restaurants, bars, and convenience stores, because Pace-O-Matic knows small businesses are the heart of our neighborhoods. It's why Pace-O-Matic supports a smart, modified tour and this podcast. To learn more about Pace-O-Matic and the work in our community, visit us at www.paceomatic.com. So, as always, thanks to them for
and I just thought about a quick story about Congressman Griffith's wife. The first time I ever met her, she was Hillary Davis at the time, long time ago, 20 years ago. She was a prosecutor in Botetourt County. I go in there. I think I'm Mr. Man from Northern Virginia. I'm going to win this motion to suppress. It's a big courthouse in Botetourt. You sit like way across from each other. And there was this old judge. Morgan probably remembers the old judge's name, but he mumbled. You couldn't understand anything. What was his name, Morgan?
General District or Circuit?
Circuit.
It was Judge Haas.
Yeah, Judge Haas. I get in there, I put on my big show, clearly not impressing him at all. But at the end, I'm trying to keep this guy out of jail. I make my argument. She makes her argument. We sit down, and this judge goes, and I'm like, and he gets up and walks off. And I look over, and this is the first time I met Hillary, and I look at her and go, "What happened?" And she screams, "You lost, you big loser." And I knew I had to be friends with her for the rest of my life. And so Morgan's got a real winner there. So anyway, that's our show for this week. Everybody love your family, love your life. Make sure that you aren't too busy making a living that you forget to make a life. God bless each one of you who are listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Pace-O-Matic. Follow us on Facebook, www.sadlerstanleyracing.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Virginia State Senator, and I'm leaning right.
And I'm Hermie Sadler, and I'm turning left. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everybody. God bless you.
Are you feeling stuck making minimum payments on your credit card debt? SaveWithConrad.com can help, and you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this. NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Oh, and did I mention no house payments for 2 months? Get rid of your credit card debt and lower your monthly payments right now at SaveWithConrad.com.